keep doing things until you find something that you do love that much, because life, like the world, is so magical. There are so many magical things in this experience we get to live on this planet, that you should have something that when you wake up, you can't believe it's real. If you're not living with something like that already, start making some sourdough. Start like raising butterflies. I don't care what you do, but find some way to tap into the magic of this human experience.
We were just talking offline. The last time we saw each other was back in 2020, which so many things have
2020.
changed. Which is actually crazy to think that you and I met and you were working on your business before the pandemic. And now here we are, and like the whole world has changed.
I think things were happening, right? And we saw it in the news, but we were all kind of like, oh, it's not going to bother us and it's going to blow over. And then we all went home and, everything changed overnight. Yeah, I look back on that. I saw someone saying, in a few days, right, we'll be in 2025, which means 2020 was literally 5 years ago.
No, but listen, I've been following you for the past 4 years since we met. And for those who don't know, so I met Nicole in Palm Springs at something called, I think it's called the Alt Summit. It was like a summit
Yeah.
for creatives. And
Yeah.
neither her and I knew anyone. And so she was like the one person I met. And I gravitated to you for so many reasons. I mean, first of all, you're from Chicago, mom of four. So we had that in common. And then on
Yeah.
top of it, you were just like, I think you were one of those people, like you meet in person. I mean, you're this way online, but meeting you in person, I could feel it, is that you have an energy and a presence about you that I'm like, wait, this girl's doing something with her life. She's going somewhere. Something is happening for her. You can't always put your finger on it, but you meet those people and you're like, there's something special about this person. They're going to do something really
Yeah.
big. You can just feel it. When I met you, I was like, oh, I could feel that for you.
Same for you. I heard you asked a question in the blog. We were in a blog workshop and you asked a question. I was like, this woman is here for it. Like, she is ready.
When I was thinking about having you on, I mean, there's so many things we could talk about because I think you're incredible in so many ways. And for those, we'll get into your story in a minute, but for those who don't know Nicole, she has a multi-million-dollar business that she created out of nothing, out of absolutely nothing, essentially teaching people how to garden, which is, incredible in its own right. And she has this amazing business and this incredible work ethic and is such a driven person. But what I love the most about her, and the reason I wanted to have her on the show today, is because all of this is really rooted and grounded in this deep sense of what feels like to me, and I want to hear you talk about it, of self-worth. That like she takes care of herself, and you see her up every morning, either swimming or getting to the gym, walking her dog, getting out in the sunshine, eating really well. And like, it feels to me like at some point when you were home with those 4 kids, which we'll talk about in a little bit, your stories, like a light bulb went off and you're like, I'm going to invest in me and I'm worth it and I'm worthy. And this is all going to come from me. And that you really changed your life by just making that decision to invest in yourself, not knowing what the business was going to be. Like the business is a secondary thing, but you had this knowing of like, I need something bigger. I want something bigger, and I'm going to take care of myself, and I'm going to invest in myself, and I'm going to trust that something's going to unfold. And so that's why I wanted to have you on the show, because I think that's so inspiring for so many women, and the thing that, we all really want at the end of the day. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
Yeah. Can we jump in for those who don't know you? Can you share a little bit about what you do and maybe getting started with Gardenary and your business?
I live in Nashville. I have 4 kids. They're all teenagers now, 17, 16, 14, 13, 3 girls and 1 boy.
Wow. Okay.
I know, it's crazy. And about 12 years ago, we started our first backyard garden. I was home. I was in nap jail. You know what I'm talking about, Katie, where you can't leave the house.
Yes.
I was in nap jail every day, and also just kind of lost myself. I had worked in philanthropy before I had kids. I was now working very little, home all the time. I wanted to be at home. I knew I was in the right place. I didn't want to miss those years, but I also honestly just wasn't, I was lost personally and professionally. And we started a garden, honestly, just as a way of survival, trying to find something that we could do with the kids and outside. And to pass the time, we had very little money. We were renting and very little time, because at this point, the kids were all 4, 3, 1 and 0. So very tiny little kids. And we started and it was pretty much a fail, but I loved it. The just like honestly, I felt like I was Martha Stewart, just like walk
Yeah.
outside, cut some garlic chives, put them in an omelet. Suddenly I was, 5-star Michelin restaurant. And so even the failure, just I loved the cadence of the garden. I loved having like the dynamic nature of the garden, the way those vegetable plants literally grow overnight. And it brought me purpose again. It kind of, I mean, I say this when I teach, like that little garden, it literally changed my life. And we moved to Texas, to Houston. My husband's a chemist. He started working at MD Anderson, and I had the kids at home. I was homeschooling, and I turned 36. And I don't know what it was, but when I turned 36, it was this moment where I went, I might be halfway done. My grandfather passed away at 74. He was like my closest grandparent. And then I watched two of my dear friends get cancer and actually pass away.
Oh,
And the mix of those 3 things, me turning 36, I just how you have these moments where you
yeah.
just
Yeah.
it's like you're watching a movie, but it's your movie.
Yeah.
And it was just a moment where I was like, I am not if I die right now or if I keep going the way I'm going, I will get to the end and I will have not done the things that I know I'm here to do. And
Yeah.
so I put the kids in school and I started trying to figure out a way to get back into the workplace. But I had a preschooler, so I wanted to be able to drop my kids off and pick up a lane at noon every day. And I could not find a job that would let me do that. And so I thought, what if I could teach people how to garden? And maybe they would pay me, like $25 or something. So I literally charged $25 for my first consult. And it took off, Katie. It took off so quickly. And in the first year, I started with a preschool refund check from one of Elaine's preschools that I applied to. It was $450. And that's the only money I had. And the only reason I had that is 'cause it was like spoken for. We knew that money was gone. So I put that in the business. And by the end of 2016, so my first full year in business, my company had made over $130,000.
In your first
And
year?
yeah, in my first
That's
year.
incredible. That's
Now,
incredible.
I was paying for raised beds and labor,
Yeah.
like, that's not like I didn't have 130,000 in cash, but
Yeah.
to see that I had turned $450 into a six-figure business in a year, I was stunned, and I was using Instagram and posting before and afters, things like that. This was back when Instagram was easy, and so I was getting an audience that was nationwide. Got through 2017, had my biggest year yet ever, but ended up in the ER in the spring. I was working so fast and so hard between dropping off the kids, doing the gardens, dropping off the kids, doing the gardens, that I stopped. I wasn't taking care of myself like I had been. And I hit a kind of crossroads. Like I could either build a really big service-based business right now and get trucks and a team and all these kinds of things, or I could take my model and multiply it through media and training and courses. And so at the place where I was at that moment, that was the right decision for me because my kids were all in elementary school. And so I started Gardenary in 2017. And we really serve two different kinds of audiences. We serve people who are just starting to garden or want to improve their garden. And for them, we teach them how to set up a Gardenary style garden, which is in Kitchen Garden Academy. And then for those who are gardeners and they want to make a living from it the way I learned how to do, we have a Gardenary certification program. And that brings them through in like 12 weeks. It teaches them how to launch their own garden coaching business, just like I did back in 2015.
Yeah.
So I got to write a couple books and ended up with, as I go along, I am obsessed with the potential that we have on social media to change the
Yeah.
world. And so I post a lot all the time.
Yeah.
And that's really my favorite thing is just the ability to influence people toward the good. And so we've ended up now we have an audience of about 2.5 million around across all
That
channels.
is
And
crazy. 2
I
million
know,
people.
I know. It's like you can't even. I was thinking the other day, I heard someone say, like in a stadium, one of the biggest stadiums, you can fit like 60,000 people. And I was like, wow, that's, 2 million is so many tens of that, so many
Yeah,
stadiums. So,
yeah.
so my big mission, my big why that keeps me going is, Elaine, my youngest, she'll graduate from high school in 2030. And so, when she graduates, my dream has always been from the day I started in 2015 that gardening is normalized again. So that if you bump into someone on the street, or if you're at the grocery store, if you're at, Pilates or wherever you are, 90% of the people in that room are growing a little bit of their own food. When they get home, they're gonna pick a little bit of food that they can put into an omelet or a smoothie or a soup that night. So that's what I'm pushing toward. And yeah, that's my big dream, is that my kids live in a world full of gardeners.
Oh, I love that so much. I don't know if you knew this about me and my that I was a chef in my former life,
Wow.
before having kids. Yeah, and did you ever used to go to, like, the Green City Market in Chicago?
Yeah.
That was always where so I before I met John Paul, like, that's where I always shopped. I was into the food world, and I was into, like, slow food living. One of our very first dates was out, like, foraging for mushrooms for morels. So I was always like, "This is where your food comes from. It doesn't come from the grocery store." And that
Yes.
was, before it was, like, a thing. But I think that's a beautiful mission and a beautiful why, and I'm right there with you, and, like, what a incredible world our world would be if we could all, A, just, like, create things on our own, get our hands in the soil because it nurtures us and it feels good for us. And then on top of it, like the food that it can produce is just a beautiful byproduct. But just the fact that we can get our hands in soil is something I think we're all really missing in today's day and age. I love that. I love that so much. What's your passion behind food and gardening? Like, where does that come from?
Food was my enemy for a long time. From 16 to 26, I struggled with food addiction. And the way I define food addiction is just like you would think of, substance abuse, or the way when I finally got a word for it, I was watching the movie Pay It Forward. I don't know if you saw this with Helen Hunt, the most beautiful story of this really sweet young boy. And in the movie, Helen, is battling alcoholism, and there's a moment where she's alone and she goes to her bathroom and she finds her stash and she drinks, and she doesn't want to, but she does it. And I was like, I am her. Like, that is me with food. And so, like, I developed this in my middle school, high school years, just this very unhealthy cycle of like going through life, doing life, functioning like a very high functioning person. I was all the things in high school and in college. But inside here was in my head was, 24/7 a conversation of, I want to eat that. I want to go in a room and I want to eat that all by myself. And I don't want to stop, and I want to eat until I'm so full that I feel sick. And I had a control mechanism. I wouldn't like drive to Dunkin' and buy, a dozen donuts and finish it. It would be more like a box of Frosted Flakes, or, a box of Snackwell cookies. And it
Yep.
started
Yep.
simply in high school, where I would just come in, feel all the drama and emotion of the day, and, who said what, and he hates me, and she's taking my
Mhm.
boyfriend, all
Mhm.
that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And then I would
Mhm.
just sit on the couch and numb myself with all of this junk food.
Yeah.
And so, fast forward to my 20s, and after college, I moved overseas to live in southwestern China. And I
Okay.
went there thinking I was going to do good for them. And, they were an impoverished area, developing country. I was with, not developing country, but developing group of people. And they were agrarian, and I'd never lived among agrarian people before, and or even seen an agrarian lifestyle. And over the 2 years I was there, I slowly began to, like, see the simplicity of their life practices, and I didn't have words for it at that time, but I started just kind of adopting their lifestyle of, going out in the morning and moving your body before you eat, and associating, if you think back, like, the way we evolved as humans, we, we're all agrarian, and we all evolved to wake up early with the sun, go outside, move your body, bring in food, make food for like midday. I just started looking at, before, it was always like, oh, I got to get on the treadmill to burn 300 calories because I
Right.
just had
Right. Yeah.
those frosted flakes, right? And then suddenly it was this shift in going like, no, it's not this like caloric deficit. It's not this like go to the gym, then eat this much food, weigh it out. It was more like, what if this is just like a lifestyle? What if this is
Yeah.
just being in sync with nature and food production? And I remember I had these lychees that were so delicious. And I went back to the farmer's market or the farmer like the next day. I was like, can I get more of these? And he was like, oh, gone. Like they're gone.
Oh, yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
gone.
yeah.
So like tomorrow? And he's like, no,
Yeah.
next year.
Like, not sure, yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I like those, and
Yeah.
I was so used to this culture of like, you get it the minute you want it, you can eat as much
Yeah,
as you.
yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that was the slow evolution. My body started to heal and I started to change. You can see a change in like my energy and my presenting and like just even the shape of my body when I came back. But the time it really hit home was when we set up that garden. I couldn't figure out when I came back to the States, I could not figure out how to marry the two, how to take the things I had learned in China, living in that agrarian lifestyle, to suburban living in the US, right? And it took me, I was like in this constant tension. And so when we set up that first garden, it was like a light bulb moment, Katie, where I went, now this is a very, very minute expression of it. But I started to feel that same rhythm of like outside, sunrise, pick a
Yeah.
few things. And it was like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the way we marry the two of like, we're not agrarians anymore, right? We do live in industrial technological age, but we left some things behind that really are meant to always stay. It's like, now the fact that everyone's like 10,000 steps a day, 10,000 steps a day, so we're all on a treadmill or we're walking in circles in our neighborhood. And it's oh, wait, but what if you just had like some tasks you had to do outside every day that require you to walk? And it's so funny because like we took all that away and then now we're substituting with all these artificial means to get steps. So it's just been this slow revelation, honestly. Like when I lived there, even when I came back, I didn't know that this is how it would all piece back together. But that really is it. It was like my own personal struggle, starting to feel a little bit of the solution when I lived overseas, and then watching those two things come together.
It's such a beautiful story. Thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing about your struggles with food, disordered eating. I think that's actually, and I don't wanna, like, project this on, like, all women, but I really think that's, like, a very common story of, like, we all sort of, like, numb ourselves with numb our emotions with food or other types
Yeah.
of vices looking for a way to escape, and I love that the garden and getting back really what it sounds like is, like, back into your body and really was the thing that healed you. And I think so much of what you're saying, Nicole, about the garden, although I don't necessarily garden right now. We have in the past, but I feel like what you're talking about is really this idea of just like being really present and in your body and letting your body sort of like lead in these things. It feels to me very like almost meditative, which is something
Yes.
that's obviously like so deep and important for me, is this idea of like, I'm going to be really present here. And whether it's cutting the chives for my omelet, like you're really there and you're feeling the chives and you're smelling it as you're cutting it. And like, you're feeling the sun on your face and you're feeling your feet as you're walking out into the garden and you're really there and you're present. And I think that when you can do that, it really creates um, a sense of well-being within you, that then you fill up on this sense of like wholeness of self, that you don't feel this need to fill that void, if that makes any sense. Like it almost like it fills it and you no longer have this empty feeling of like, now I need to binge or I need to scroll on social media or I need to buy all these things. That sort of like, I think quiets that noise a little bit. So I really relate in different story, but really relate to what you shared. So thank you for saying that and for sharing your story. Because I always think that part of for women, like their well-being is having a purpose and having a calling and feeling a sense of like, this is what I'm here on this planet to do. And I think for many mothers, it can be really easy to get like, okay, mothering for a certain point can fill that. And then for some of us, depending on like where we're at in our motherhood journey, are asking for something more. And I think sometimes it can feel like we don't know what our purpose or our calling is. And I always think that it can go back to like just simply sharing our story and sharing our gifts. And I think sometimes we misplace that or confuse our gifts with like, it has to be something that we're like, we went to college for or that we're an expert in, instead of it just being something, which I love what you did, is something as simple as like, let me just teach you this one simple tool I know, like getting out and like growing these chives or whatever, or creating this garden. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about like sharing your gifts? And is that what it feels like for you? Like this is just, did it feel like this was creating a business for you? Or is this something that you're like, I just want to simply share part of my story or share my gifts?
I think all of it, I've thought about this before, is like, it's kind of like, AI and chat GPT, right? Like the beauty of that is I can ask it a question and it's pulling. My son actually explained this to me. My 16-year-old. I was like, ChatGPT said this. Why was that such a good answer? And he's like, Mom, because it's pulling from the collective. It's from all the things on the internet. I think about this with women. Used to we would all meet. Well, like the women I worked with in China, like they all meet up every day, right? At the well
Yeah.
or at the field. And they're all sharing, I'm sure, like, well, this is how I got my baby to go to sleep. And this is how, I put this in dinner last night and it was so good, And so I think for all of us, we have it's like unknown genius or like recognized,
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
and there are things
Yeah.
that all of us have, like hacks and shortcuts, things that we figured out how to do. And none of us, I think, now I am different, but I think a lot of women don't have the confidence to see it for themselves. For me, the garden was an unlock. For me, the garden was when I figured that out. First of all, I had never done it before and I failed first. And then when we moved to Houston, my good friend gave me, speaking of friends, she gave me lettuce seed because they weren't going to have a garden that year. And Katie, we had lettuce from like October to April. I would wake up and go outside in the dark. I'd cut lettuce for Jason's salad to bring to work. I would make myself a salad. The kids played zoo out there and they would pretend to be animals. I mean, it was like the coolest thing. And so I didn't have anything to sell. I wasn't trying to sell anything. I couldn't help myself. Like I would be, at the playground, I'd be like, are you growing lettuce? Did you know that you can grow lettuce
Yeah.
in Houston for 6 months? Do you want to try some of mine? You can come over and taste it. I swear all you need to, I was just like, I was selling it when I had nothing to sell. And I think for everyone listening, like honestly, like keep doing things until you find something that you do love that much because life, like the world is so magical. There are so many magical things in this experience we get to live on this planet that you should have something that when you wake up, you can't believe it's real. And so if you're not living with something like that already, start making some sourdough, start like raising butterflies. I don't care what you do, but find some way to tap into the magic of this human experience. And that for me, the garden was that first thing. Now my favorite thing is marketing. Like now, if
Yeah.
you and I
Yeah.
got together, I'd be like, Katie, here's 20 video ideas you have to do because it will
Yeah.
literally explode your business, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's get your podcast on like the top thing,
Yeah.
because I've gotten to experience the magic of the internet and the magic of sharing little videos and things. And so I think like for us as women, one to wake up with that, I'm not done learning. I'll never be done learning. I'm in school right now. Like I'm in university. I'm in Life University. What class can I sign up for today? And then when you find that thing that you love that just you can't help but talk about, then talk about it ad nauseum until you're tired of talking about it. There's such a long tail benefit to that. And you don't have to sell anything. You don't have to want to sell anything. But if you found something magical, when you find that thing, all of us will, it should be shared, right? It should be like, don't keep it to yourself. Like, what do they say? Like, when you share it, you double it. And so Yeah, I think for me, I would, if tomorrow you said, Nicole, your business is done, closed, it's over, I'd be like, great, I'll start another one. I love it so much. And so, yeah, I think as women, for me, I'll tell you, as a mom, I was pouring everything into homeschooling my kids and trying to be a great wife and all these things. And I had this day, I was just talking with my senior about this last week. We were together on a soccer tournament. And I said, I had this day where I really felt unliked by all of you guys.
Ah,
She said,
oh,
she
yeah,
said,
I
"Oh,
get that.
mom, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Oh, no, no." I was like,
Yeah,
I was like, "You're a human being. Like, I have days I
yeah.
don't like my mom. But I had this day where I realized I cannot make anyone like me and I cannot make anyone happy, but I can definitely make myself happy. Like, there's only one person I truly know how to make happy, and that's me. And I'm making myself miserable and no one's happy about it."
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah,
it
yeah.
was this I literally looked at her, it was too much pressure to ask a kindergartner, but I literally looked at her one day, we were homeschooling, and I said, "You really don't like me right now, do you?" And she was like, "No." And like I said, too much pressure to put on her, that was an immature thing for me to ask her, but it was definitely a moment of clarity of, um, the best way to serve my family is to be the
Yeah.
happiest human being I possibly can be.
Oh, I love that so
Yeah.
much. That's always like that's the number one thing I always say with women. Like if you can learn to be with yourself and to love yourself and to pour into yourself, which is really hard in today's day and age. And I'm not talking about like the superficial, like bubble bath kind of take self-care. Like that's not what Nicole's talking about. Just so everyone's listening. I'm talking about like a real deep, like knowing of who she is and like believing in her own self-worth that like this life that she's building, she's worthy of experiencing something really magical, and then she goes out and is making it happen. I think so many of us, exactly what you said, like there's so much magic in this world and we are missing it, worrying about what people are going to think about us or if this is going to fail, instead of just being like, you know what, I'm just here to experience it. I don't know, I'm just going to experience it. And I also think too, like we're waiting for this thing to like become this expert at something before we can start sharing it, like waiting to like get all of our ducks in a row. And I think what you do so organically, and this is what I really think like you are an expert at. Like you are here on this planet to show other people how to just try things and to share things before it's done. Like so many people want it to be like wrapped up with a bow instead of being like,
Yeah.
let me share the process as I'm learning along with you so you can come along with me. And I think that's why people gravitate towards you as a leader and you do that so beautifully. It's really, really inspiring. But exactly what you said earlier for any woman right now listening, because I think, especially if you're in midlife, like you and I am pretty sure it's a similar age, like, and all the women listening here, we're in this like midlife where our kids are in this high school phase, going off to college, and you're like, I forgot about me. And like you've done a beautiful
Yeah.
job not forgetting about you. And so if you're listening and you're like, I don't know what's next for me, like you can begin today by just simply tuning into like what is the thing that lights you up and you start sharing it without it having to be knowing what the big picture is. Like you just start, like you just start.
Mm, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about Nicole? You have this like multi-million dollar business, which is crazy and unbelievable for coming from a $450 paid return check from a preschool. But is there a part of you that ever dealt with this like imposter syndrome or feeling like do you just have this innate confidence in you, or do you ever have those moments that you're like, I don't know, I still feel like that this is, I don't know, not all real, and that you're not really this woman who has this incredible business. What does that look like for you?
It is so a journey, it's like it's like a climb on a mountain where it's really hard to see where you are on the map, first of all, right? Like when I lived in China, actually, we tried to map where these villages were because they were all hidden in these mountains. And I'm terrible. I am so awful at geography. Like I have to map myself home from a walk, that's how bad I am. So I think that all of us, like one awareness I do have is that I'm not sure where I am on the map. Like,
Okay.
I know what's right underneath my feet, but I'm not quite sure what map I'm on, and I'm not quite sure like where I am. And I think that is in itself is kind of a superpower in the sense of like not having to know, right? Like knowing I know my next step and I have like an idea of where I'm headed, but not feeling like I always have to know exactly at the moment where I am. I think confidence is it's like going on that hike, right? Like when you're at the bottom, I love this. This is in one of my favorite books, The 12-Week Year, but he talks about when you first start, you have ignorance, right? You have no idea how hard it's going and you have super high optimism, right? Because you have no idea how hard the hike is. You see the peak and you're like, that is so exciting. I'm heading there. And so your optimism and your confidence is really high, but your skill is super low. You
Yeah.
have like no skill, right? Then you take the first big jump, the first big incline, and suddenly the confidence, the optimism, it drops to the ground literally
Okay.
because you're like, there is no way I'm making it to the top. Like this first step
Yeah.
fell apart.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
But the thing you can't see there is actually your skill improved,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
actually your stakes got better because
Yeah.
you've gotten further along and you've actually built some muscle because you actually took some steps. So your confidence and your optimism went way down, but your skill and your experience went up. And then, they talk about as basically this whole journey of any kind of climb we're doing is this constant dance between confidence and optimism and skill. And the irony is, as our skill progresses, oftentimes our confidence and optimism goes down because we become aware
Mm.
of how big the mountain is.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
it's like, but the weird thing is in that moment, the moments where you have the least amount of optimism and confidence are actually your best moments because it's no
Yeah.
longer ignorance. It's no longer this
Yeah.
blissful ignorance of, "Oh, this is gonna be so fun and easy, and let's climb the
Yeah.
mountain."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, I would say at any given time, if you look at my head, it is a dance of those things. It's a dance of, like, huge optimism. I will say my superpower is optimism. Like, I do believe I'm building a billion-dollar business, and I really do believe that. I have no idea how I'm gonna do it, but I really do. I wake up and I write it down and I believe it. And I'm only at like 4 million right now. So not even close. But I do have that big dream and big goal. I think optimism is being, an optimist is huge. And then I think like always kind of trying to get some sense of where you are on the map. So where am I right now? Am I building my skill set? Okay, when I'm building my skill set, my confidence and my optimism is going to go down because I'm realizing this is going to be a challenge. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
everything else is like a balance of those things. But I love it. I love the tension. I think being a gardener and being an entrepreneur, those two things are the ultimate human experience. Um, I would wish entrepreneurship on every single woman listening to this because even if it fails, even if you don't make any money, it has been for me the most powerful form of self-discovery. I mean, I'm 9 years into being an entrepreneur this year, and Katie, it just goes deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the the frailties, the weaknesses, the places I
Mm.
failed, and I just keep finding more layers of things I need to unearth and unpack and thoughts and like just judgments that I have,
Yeah.
from childhood. And the way those come to the surface is in these very unique hikes, right? Like I love taking my kids to national parks because you never know what's on the other side of that start of a hike. And to me, it's such a perfect picture of entrepreneurship because you say, oh, like I'm launching a podcast, right? Or oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna try to sell this product, or every time you do that, it's a new hike and it
Yeah.
shows you get to do that whole dance over and over again. And I'm literally obsessed with it. It's like it's my favorite way of growing as a human.
Yeah, yeah, I get that so much. Oh gosh, there's so many good things that you shared in there. That was incredible. I think that that explanation of like the peak that you're trying to reach and how it flips with our confidence and our skill set is it's real. It's what really happens. I mean, I know for one, I'm going through so many of those moments right now in my own business. Even when I started this podcast, I was like, this is going to be amazing. And like within the week 2, I was like crying to JP. I'm like, that's it. I quit. And, I was working on this book and I've really struggled with it this year. And JP's like, did you think you were going to become a New York Times bestseller? And I was like, no, I literally did. He's like, you did? I'm like, no, I just did. Same thing with you. It's like, I have crazy, like, probably unrealistic, like a little naive and just like optimistic and hopeful. And then I try things. I'm like, wait, so that actually is like really hard to do to become a New York Times bestseller. Like it is hard. I mean, obviously, I think the thing is that what you do when I'm working on too for my own self is just like not quitting. I'm being like, okay, so it's
Yes.
going to be harder, but I believe in myself and I'm not going to give up on myself. And just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it's not going to, it just hasn't happened yet. And I'm going to keep going and I'm not going to quit. And I think for a lot of women, because we have so many other messages in society that I think are different than men, like poured on us about how we should be or what's expected of us in homes or different things, is that as soon as we get that feeling of like we might fail, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to shut it down. And it's like, no, of course. And we're going to fail and we're going to keep going and I believe in yourself enough. And that's really like the difference between people who succeed and who don't. It's like they just didn't quit. They just kept going. They just kept going on that hike. Even when that confidence fell, even when that optimism fell, they just kept going. It's just like, it's a marathon. I think we can get really, forget that and get really short-sighted.
Yeah, and to your point about the New York Times bestseller, I had that goal too, and I have my third book coming out, and I'm probably sure I'm not going to make it. But I will say one thing I've learned too, and for you too, is like set the goal to be something that's 100% in your control, right? So
That's
like the
good. Yeah.
bestseller list, the thing I learned about that is it's not in my control. Like I just watched Cody Sanchez launch her book. I know she sold 20,000 copies before it even
Yeah.
came out. And at least from what I can see, I don't know, I don't think she made the list. And that's crazy to me. Like she
Yeah.
sold that book, and so I'm like, if she can't do it, how am I going to do it?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think instead, like for my new book that's coming out, I just have a goal number of how many books I'm going to sell.
I love that.
And
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
so it's like always, because I'll do that too. And I probably need to do this around the $1 billion business idea. It needs to be something more that's like, I want a business with this many customers, or I want a business that, because those are numbers that are in our control. That's why I would never set a goal for social media of like, I want to have 1 million followers because that's not in my control. But I could set a goal that's like, I'm going to post 600 times next year because that I can do. And I think a lot of us as women, we grow up in this like reward cycle, right? Where we performative, right? And we're waiting on someone else to tell us that we're worthy. And so I think we can unknowingly set these goals for ourselves that put the ball in someone else's court and they get to decide if we make it or not. Yeah.
Yeah. You're
So,
so right. We give our power away. Like we just give it away. We're
yeah.
like, I'm going to let you
Yeah.
determine if I'm successful or not. Why do we
Yes.
do that? You're
Yeah.
so
So for
right. I
your
love that
book,
simple
for your
reframe.
Yeah, so for your book, it should be like, I'm gonna write this many words. It's gonna be have this message, and I'm gonna, it could be like I'm gonna write about it this many times, or I'm gonna sell this many copies. But make sure your goal is all Katie's. Like Katie owns it 100%. She gets to decide like when the goal is met or not.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, I want to be really mindful of your time here, but I want to get to the 5 Minute Gardener, which I can't wait to talk about your new book. But before we jump into that, can you share a little bit because I think you do such a nice job of taking care of your well-being. And I see you every day, like going out for walks with your dog at like 5 in the morning. And I'm an early morning riser too. What's your foundation for your well-being? Because you pour into yourself, I think, more than a lot of entrepreneurs that at least what I see online. I love that you show that. Can you just share a little bit about what that looks like for you?
Yeah, just like a schedule or just like
Yeah, not even as a schedule, or just like your well-being. Like what's for you, what is taking care of yourself? Like what are your maybe a couple foundations? Is it getting outside? Is it like, do you have a meditation practice? Like what's it for you? Like what are the things that you do to take care of your own well-being?
Yes, I said I did a post recently about um overcoming food addiction. So okay, and the first one is very embarrassing, but I do focus on pooping.
Great. I love that.
My
No, I
da
love that.
my
I
daughter
love
was
that.
like
I do too.
my daughter's like, "Okay, TMI, mom, TMI." I'm like, "I
No, it's
know."
not.
But literally, it's like that's a signal to me. I can tell if I'm relaxed. I can tell if I'm
Yep.
keeping a schedule. I can tell if I'm rested with my gut health. And so that's like I use that as like my barometer, I guess, or whatever. Like that's my pulse check. Like, is my gut in good health? If so, that means I'm resting, I'm eating, I'm having time to like sit and tell my body it's safe. So that's one very, embarrassing thing. I do try to, I have dogs, so that helps kind of put me on a schedule. I walk them right around sunrise every day. We walk about a mile. And then it's all about my kids and getting them up and going. So the next hour is for them. I make them breakfast, I make their lunches. Could they do it themselves? Yes. This is just a small part. I want them to always look back, and we have the mornings. And so I send them off, give them all a high five and hug them. And then once they leave, I go to the gym. And so I try to do about 20 minutes of like low impact cardio. So my favorite is just climbing stairs.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like burn a bunch of calories. I
Yeah.
just feel really good when I get my heart rate to like a medium
Yeah.
pace, and I sweat. I feel really good if I can sweat. And then I'll do some weights, and I kind of alternate between my arms, my legs, and my shoulders and back. And then I just started going into the sauna for 20 minutes a day. And that is so Katie, I cannot tell you how my stress level went down with that. But, I do that, then I come home, and I talk about this in 5 Minute Gardener, but I don't go inside yet. I go to the garden and I get greens, and I make myself, a 3-egg omelet with greens from the garden. And then I start my day, and then I work basically from that time, 9:30, get ready in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah. Yeah.
I work until my kids are out of school, and then I'm with them, bringing them to soccer and cheer and all these kinds of
Yeah.
things. Almost always make dinner for them, and, that's probably a little bit less, like, garden-esque, it's more, like, teenage friendly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and what they like to eat versus what I think is healthy. And then I started, and then like I usually hang out with them in the evening, especially my two younger girls will hang out, watch TV, and just goof around. And then I try to get to bed between 9 and 10. So right around
Yeah.
9 or so, I'll start like my little thing. I drink some like hot tea and try to read a book or something before I go to sleep, and then try to get a good, 10 to 5 is my goal for sleep. The one thing I started doing, at the beginning of 2023, which has totally changed my body, my life, kind of my awareness, is I have a woman come do like a body work massage on me once a week. What I've learned is I have a very high tolerance for stress. So
Mhm.
I live in a lot of
Yeah.
activities and motion, and I look like I'm doing fine, and I store all my stress right here in my neck and my shoulders. And
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
every week, I used to call it a massage, and I think my team thought I was like, "Oh, at the spa."
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, "No, no, you don't understand, like, she is, like, grinding in my
Yeah.
muscles here." Because I literally have just balls of tension in my shoulders and my neck. And so that has been a really, incredible practice I've done over the last 2 years is, if I'm in town, if I don't have something, she's here every week to do that for an hour, and that's been awesome. And then I love to journal, I love to write down. It's not so much journaling, I would say I just try to, like, dump my brain out and get
Yeah.
everything
Yeah. Yeah.
out of my head.
Yeah.
I'm a thinker, and so my brain can drive me crazy, so trying to get thoughts onto paper. And then I will say I studied under the life coach school in after I met you, actually, 2020, 2021. And I learned just this idea of, looking at your thoughts and analyzing them. and figuring out how your thoughts create your reality. And so I've become really, really in tune with my just everyday moments where I'll go. It just happened yesterday. I was on my phone doing checking email, and I went to get in my car to go pick up Rebecca, my third. And I went, "Where'd my peace go?" And I could tell that I had a negative feeling in my body, and it was new, and I tried to trace it back to what did I see or read that suddenly made me feel this way. And I'm not there yet. I'm not 100% yet there yet, Katie, but like that has been life changing to be
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
just notice in a moment something was said, I read something, I saw something, a thought came across and it took the piece.
Yeah.
And it's just those little moments, like my daughter said the other day, she was talking about something that happened with a friend. And I was cooking breakfast, listening to her, and I immediately felt the feeling of I
Yeah.
just suddenly felt defensive, possessive, negative. And what I wanted to do with my mouth was start to solve the problem with her, start to tell her,
Yep. Yep.
this is
Yeah.
what you should say, this is what you should do. Have you done this? I wanted to like kind of give her all that negative I was feeling. I wanted to kind of assign it to her and have her go fix the problem. And literally, as I'm like turning the eggs and I'm going, okay, what are you feeling right now? What thought did you have? What are the other ways that this could get better? So that to me, if I don't get like, if my business doesn't grow, if everything just stalls out from here on out and I get to keep this gift of
Yeah.
self-awareness, I'm fine. I want to keep growing
Yeah.
in it. That truly has been life changing. And yeah, it helps me when I wake up and I don't wanna walk or I don't wanna work out. It's those little daily habits that your physical body comes to rely on so that you can just stay in tandem with it. I see my body now as, like, my partner.
Oh, it's so good. I love that so much, and I love what you do, that you do all these things physically, right? Like, we're looking at elimination, you're doing the sauna, you're getting the body work, you're doing all these things, but the biggest thing for everyone who's listening is that what I'm hearing Nicole say is, like, it really is, and I talk about this and see this with the women I work with, and I know this for myself too, is, like, the unlock is when we can start recognizing that we are not our thoughts, we are not our emotions, and that we can separate it, and we can become, like, the observer witnessing it, and then there's a
Yeah,
wealth of information we can get about what's the next best choice. Maybe for you in that moment, it was like not responding with your daughter about giving her the advice and just being a listener. And maybe it's like in your mind in the morning, it was like, I don't want to go for a walk. You're like, okay, but I'm not my thoughts. Like, I actually know that a walk is good for me. I'm not listening to you today, And I
yeah,
think that that's really the thing is like, for so long, we've kind of been enmeshed like with our thoughts and our emotions. And to have just even a glimmer of separation between those two, to be like, oh, hold on, I get to become aware of what's happening now, and I get to make a more empowered choice that feels aligned with what really would feel good for me. And then that like changes the course of our whole day. And for you, it sounds like then like also changes the course of then like a whole business you get to grow and all these other amazing things you get to do. But it comes because who you are is really centered and grounded, and like you're connected with yourself, mind, and body. And you're not just powering through like back in the old days, what we used to do, just like push through. Like you're really doing this from a place that's sustainable and that feels good and that feels aligned. And that's really what I think the world, like we're moving towards that in that direction. And like those are the types of leaders that like you're going to really change the world for good and do really amazing things. So it's beautiful to see. So thank you for sharing that. Like that's what leadership can look like and what taking care of ourselves can look like and an entrepreneur can look like.
yeah. Because your business, one thing I learned, in a hard way is like your business is just a reflection of you. And
Yeah.
so
So
it's
true.
so it's
Yeah.
been a hot mess, and it's like you look and you go, oh, and the more your team grows, the more you look and you go, oh, this is a mirror, this is a mirror of me. And
Yeah, it really is.
you can ask my team. I have so much further to grow in this. But yeah, I think it's, us taking full responsibility for the day and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
ourselves. And we really do there's a lot of things that are out of our control. But if you get down to it, there are just so many things that really we can control. And so it's like, and I guess for everyone listening, like just you are worthy of it. You're worth you're worth making your own self happy. And the happier you make yourself, the more power you have to bring happiness to other people.
Okay, I'm gonna just like that was it. Like you summed it all
Oh,
up.
do it.
Like that was it. Was it. That was it. Listen to Nicole. Before you go, can you please tell us about the 5 Minute Gardener, where they can get it? Tell me everything about this book. I'm like, first of all, obsessed because it really is. I'm like, wait, if you can change your life and like do what Nicole's doing in 5 minutes, like let's all do this. So tell us about the book.
Yes. Yes. We just did this big harvest in my garden. We're doing a photo shoot for the book. And I grew all this in 5 minutes a day.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
in 5 minutes a day over a
yeah.
year.
Every
And
day,
that
every
really is,
day.
that,
Yeah,
yes, that really is the thing. It's 5 minutes a day. And so it's just like the other habits we talked about, like walking or working out or making breakfast. I really think we are all meant to be tied to the garden in some way, no matter if we live in a high rise or if we live on a farm or somewhere in between. We all eat, and there's a lot of foods that the recency of harvest really matters. So it's not, we're promised all these vitamins and nutrients from fresh vegetables, but most of the things we're eating from the grocery aren't fresh. They've been on the shelves for, 2, 3 weeks, and they'll sit on our shelves for a week. And so 5 Minute Gardener is about the simple things like herbs and greens and little crops that all of us can grow. And it's a step by step for what to do when you have 5 minutes. So I outlined it in seasons. So in the first section, I teach you how to understand what season you're in, no matter where you live. So like you, Katie, in California, you're probably in your cool season, maybe still a little warm. And then if I were in Chicago, if you were in Chicago right now, you'd be in your cold season. So everyone can find their season. And then you flip to that season and it tells you what to do this week, what to do next week, what to do when you've got a little bit of time. And then at the end of each season, there's these lists of just 5 minute activities you can do over 90 days, so it really guides you through each season. I think all of us know deep down. And most people tell me they can't garden because they don't know how, or they've tried and they failed.
yeah,
But I think we all know that we could do it if we had the
yeah,
time. What I found is most people, when they're saying, they failed or they don't have a green thumb, what they're really saying is, I don't have the time to develop it. And so the goal with this book is to remove that excuse and show you, you don't have to be a farmer. You don't have to spend hours and hours. I literally spend 5 minutes a day and I eat from my garden every day. And it's so life-giving. And so this book is really just a guide that you can just keep on your coffee table. You can, keep by your back door and just look it up every time you got 5 minutes. And the theme is don't go inside yet. So when you come back from dropping off your kids, when you did carpool, when you're coming back from soccer practice, don't go inside just yet. Go out to the garden, do something for 5 minutes, and it adds up a lot.
Oh, I love that. Okay, we're gonna link the book in the show notes, and I was actually thinking about who I need to get that book for because I really think it's such a beautiful thing, and it's such a simple shift. It's like just a few minutes a day doing something that I agree with you. Like intuitively, like we already know that that's how we should be eating, and that's what we're all capable of doing that. I always say the same thing about meditation. I'm like, we all can actually do this. Like this is how we're like meant to be. We've just forgotten, and we have convinced ourselves that we're not
Yes.
capable of it. Yeah, so this is really, really beautiful. I love that. I can't wait to get my hands on it, and I'm just so excited for you. And congratulations! And not like what an undertaking too. Like, and I'm writing a whole nother book along with everything
Yeah.
else you're doing. So, huge congratulations!
Thank you. It's so fun to get to share it. I love getting books in
Yeah,
people's hands.
I know. Yes, and thank you so much for being here, Nicole. You've been just so much beautiful information. I feel like, and so many inspiring just nuggets. I just really appreciate your time and just being here.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.